You're listening to the Men After God podcast, the show dedicated to empowering men to navigate life's challenges through the lens of faith. In this episode, we'll tackle real-world issues that matter, from leadership and personal growth to marriage, fatherhood, and balancing career and family. Join us as we explore insightful conversations and practical advice to help you thrive as a man after God's own heart.
Hey, man. If you're just tuning into this episode, know that it is the second part of a two-part episode because the topic that we covered of a season of embracing, a season withdrawing, I came into a conversation of divorce in our previous episode, and we felt that it got very heavy, and we just wanted to pause it and give guys an opportunity to kind of process what we talked about, maybe be able to apply or help some other men apply. Today's episode is going to stay on topic of embracing and withdrawing as we talk about relationships with family members and friends and spouse, setting boundaries. If you're a people pleaser, how to go about setting boundaries. And so I hope this episode's a blessing to you, and go on and enjoy that. Luke, man, you're absolutely right. And guys, you know, what we've been talking about is some heavy stuff, and it's going to stay heavy during this podcast, especially this two-parter that you're listening to right now. Let's talk about those families that are together. Let's talk about the fun Thanksgiving gatherings with the family members, your auntie and your uncle or ex-auntie and uncle that still showed up, and all that fun stuff that's going on. Luke, somebody asked me just today, am I going to move back to my family? And, you know, I love my family, but oh my, yeah, there's a lot there. And so not every family is an ideal family. Every family's got a little bit of crazy in it. And if you can't identify who the crazy is, congratulations, it's you. And relationships inside of families are a wonderful thing to explore and work out, because there's sometimes you love them, there's sometimes you don't, and how that works out. And then throw in an extra dynamic for those that are married. You have these special people in your life called in-laws. And they can be wonderful or not. Having these different relationship dynamics is vital for working through these relationship dynamics is vital for your spouse, for you, for your children, and as a follower of Christ. How do we work through these things? And how do we respect boundaries? How do we withdraw and embrace? How do we work through that? Let's talk about it for a minute. Luke, when it comes to family relationships, I know that I've had some family members I can be around for a period of time. And then there's a time where I need to withdraw. Do you think, in your experience and what you'd recommend to someone, what's it like with the extended family? Should they seek to always fully embrace them? Or should they try to separate from the ones that they don't get along with, regardless of how their spouse feels? What are your thoughts on that one?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. You know, I'm like, where's this going to land?
Yeah,
I think that so let's talk to our married men here for just a minute. If you have, you're married, you have a spouse, no matter what you do, your spouse, after your relationship with God, your spouse is your first relationship. Your relationship with God, and then your relationship with your spouse is your first priority. It's your first ministry, if you would. And so, through the lens of that, there are scenarios. And by the way, there's so many scenarios here specifically. No. When it comes to your spouse, be mindful of what your spouse is needing. Right. And I'm not always talking about what they want. I'm talking about what they need. And you're the spiritual leader of their home. You have to be mindful. You need to lead. And if you don't know what that means, then you need to seek the Lord and follow his guidance there. So in that realm, there's situations. And by the way, you know, Dustin talks about his family. I have a crazy family too, but I love them. Like, I would move back with them in a heartbeat. Like, I love my family. And I've been blessed with two sets of great in-laws. Like, so my Alicia's parents and sisters, and then also my Monica's parents and brother and grandparents. And so we feel very, very spoiled with that. But there's situations where when there's a relationship that's off, or there's a relationship that needs boundaries, and just because you don't need the boundaries, you're like, well, you know, for me, maybe in an illustration with Monica and myself, right? I've had a relationship with family members that we go back a long way, but was 35 when I met Monica. That means I have 35 years of relationships prior to her that I understand there's some depth there. There's some trust. There's some conflict that's been resolved, right? Well, then we bring in Monica where maybe there's conflict that happens now, but she doesn't have that past experience with my brother. She doesn't know my siblings, right? So if there's a conflict there, if there's something going on, where for me, I'm like, well, we'll work our way through it. We'll be fine. I'll build a bridge and da-da-da-da. Well, that doesn't work for her because she doesn't understand that past. And that's not fair for me to be like, well, no, we just need to get over it and move on because of, hold on. Her heart matters in this and her perspective matters in this. And just because you're like, well, I'm spiritually going to lead through this. No, hold on. You need to spiritually lead and be mindful that your wife needs to be involved in that process. And so where there's been hurt, there needs to be healing. And just because you say it's healed doesn't mean it's healed. So just be very mindful in the dynamic of the relationship. Your wife is your first ministry. Your kids are your second ministry. And it doesn't mean they're second. It just means that they, in order, they're right. And so just be mindful. So I've got 2 kids that are love language of touch. Physical embrace is their thing. We got back from Boston the other night and we sat on the couch and I immediately sat down and I got 2 kids up against me. They're literally, in fact, it wasn't on either side. It was like I had one laying against me. The other one saw that and climbed over on top of him. So he's on top of his brother, both of them kind of leaned up against me. It was great. And they just watched a movie, right? That's their thing. I've got 2 other kids, my daughter and my oldest son, whose love language is not physical touch. In fact, I don't try to hug them. I tease them a little bit, whatever. I tease them about it, but I don't get hugs from Lance or from Jacqueline. And by the way, I'm not going to make them feel bad about it. I really am not. That's not their thing. There's other ways that they show love. Jacqueline gives me those the sweetest sentimental gifts. That's her love language. And I feel very, very loved when she does that because I know the sacrifice, right? And so last week was Monica's birthday and Jacqueline gave Monica a very beautiful card. Says, happy birthday, Mom. It's real sweet. And for a stepmom, it just really means a lot to us. But on the back of the card, she wrote like a very sweet note on the inside. But on the back of the card, she this thing, she's like one free, only one free hug or one free hug, only one, and then she put like signed in the date that the date used like a coupon kind of a deal. Cause she's like, that's not her thing. But by the way, it's not Monica's thing either. So it actually works out fine but the concept here is I'm not going to force my kids to hug someone when they don't want to hug someone because what's natural for them, Lance will hug who he wants to hug when he wants to hug them. He just will. And when they get a hug, they have no idea how special that is for him. But I know what it means, right? So there is that awkward family reunion where, we'll hug your uncle because he's your uncle. Well, I don't even know this guy. Well, hold on a second. I'm not going to force my kids to that. Like, hey, be mindful. There's a time to embrace, time to not embrace. There's also situations where there's family pain. There's family conflict, and we need to be mindful that there's more to the story. And just because you think you know the situation doesn't mean you do. So just be mindful, be respectful. There is a discretion advised to make sure that people are getting what they need, but not being forced to do what they really shouldn't do, or don't want to, because there's always more than we know.
Absolutely. Luke, you mentioned the respect of the spouse and then, the respect of the children and their own boundaries and things. Man, it's your responsibility to make sure other people are respecting them as well. And I'm afraid too many can get into relationships and still hold mom or dad's opinion and things over the opinion or the thoughts or feelings of their spouse and children. I was watching a show the other day and it was had a Hebrew family in it, and the matriarch of the family was very, I'm going to say this not to be offensive, but I think it's a stereotypical, the relationship between a Jewish mother and her son is very special. And, you could just tell she wanted to be involved in the relationship and the show and different things of that nature. And when we choose to marry someone, we are choosing someone to separate from, if you will, our mother and father, and to cling to our spouse. They become our second most important relationship to God. And that's going to play out by, respecting your spouse's, your wife's opinion on matters and her feelings towards people and things. Now, this isn't to say that she should walk in and try to separate you from your entire family, tell you everybody's awful and all these different things. That's not what we're saying. But you should know when it's a healthy concern and stuff of being around people, or there's a fight and an argument and working through that well, but having a respect for them and their feelings. And this goes into as well your relationship with your spouse. Now, as we're talking about a time to embrace and a time to withdraw, or a time to, separate for a moment, I want to be very clear here. I'm not one for like a full separation, but I'm also not a therapist and a counselor. So I don't, recommend or not recommend those things. I'm just not for it myself. When I say a time to withdraw from your spouse, let me be very clear. There might be a time for you to cool off, might be a time for you to go gain wisdom from God and his word. There might be a time for you to just separate. Let me share a story that you can laugh at. Luke, I've never been known to be the most mature person in the room. I like to have fun. I got a big personality. I have a picture from high school that I'm wearing a shirt that said, and this is school photos, guys. Let me tell you, mom was proud, okay? My shirt says, I'm immature, lazy, and loud, but I'm fun. And that fully described me for a lot of my life. And one of the ways my immaturity showed up was being married early. I was 19 when I got married. And when my wife and I would get into an argument, I didn't have the wisdom to find my way out of a paper bag, much less navigate a conversation, a conversation of conflict. There we go, with my spouse, that in a healthy manner. I didn't have great examples of it growing up. I was never taught. And again, I'm immature, lazy, and loud, but I was fun. I'll never forget, we were in a Walmart one time and we got into let's call it a discussion. And in the heat of our discussion, she is saying, let's talk about this later. And I didn't want to. I wanted to deal with it now. I'm starting to get loud. It was highly inappropriate. I have apologized profusely for this. But I was so immature that I didn't have the wisdom to step away for a minute so that I could come back in a healthy manner and resolve that. So even in the relationship with your spouse, there's a time to be there 100% for them and always, but then there's a time to step away, withdraw, gain some wisdom, and be able to come back. There's also something to be said of, I love that my wife is able to go on like a vacation, or I say a vacation, but take some time away and go with a friend to New York. She just did that the other day, and go out with some of her friends and things. Those are healthy relationships that can be there where you can withdraw a moment, if you will, and then come back together. And then there are relationships where we have to be very careful. And these are friendships mostly that can come from your past or from her past. And the dynamic in those friendships can change, or work relationships that you have can change because you now have your spouse in your life. Or maybe you've been married for a while and you're changing jobs and things of that nature. And you've got to be real careful with your boundaries there and making sure that you're withdrawing from places or people that you need to withdraw from and embracing those that you can. And then also being willing to put your wife first and say, we are not going to have a friendship because of the impact it has on my spouse. And that's from people that can be offensive. That's from people who she might just have an intuition about. And guys, I think Luke and I can both attest to this. I know I need to do it even more, but trust your wife's intuition. She knows things you don't know. Listen to her. And be willing to make her the priority over anyone else, which means putting up boundaries. Luke's mentioned he doesn't like boundaries, but I know I don't mind them, but I don't like to hurt people. I don't want to offend people. But at the risk of being offensive, we have to be willing to put boundaries up to protect our spouse, to protect our children, and even to protect ourselves. Luke, when you've had to put up boundaries, could you give maybe some practical how to navigate doing that for some of those guys that are like you and I that just, we don't want to hurt people. We want to be friends with everybody.
Yeah. Let's say this. I think I read this meme the other day and it really resonated with me. I was like, I think I'm going to stop being a people pleaser from now on, if that's all right with the rest of you. And I think there's a confidence, a self-awareness needs to start. So I would say this: the premise of boundaries is the understanding that you have some autonomy as an individual, but it really comes down to your identity in Christ. And this is going to go full circle here for a second. I'm going to have a hard time creating boundaries if I'm so worried about other people or other people's perception of me. And the fear of that the impact of if I create a boundary, I'm going to hurt their feelings. Boundaries and the refrain does not mean rejection. It just means distance, space, if you would. So I want you to think of it like this. I'm not building a wall. There may be times for you to build a wall, right? And you need to literally block them and go into your phone and block their contact. And most of the time, that's not the scenario. And I crack up when people block and unblock and block. That's immaturity. I think that's not necessary. So if somebody is not being respectful of the boundary that you've put in place, then you need to up that. So there is a start, and the first start is, hey, my identity in Christ is I have a relationship with God. I am first and foremost my relationship with God, my relationship with my spouse, my relationship with my kids. Outside of that, anybody else, if they're invited to that circle, it is by invite. I allow them to be. It is by choice. And a lot of times we make the mistake of we just allow everybody in, and then we decide we need to push some people out because they don't belong. And hold on, just create your safe zone, your hedge of protection, if you would, around your family, and be mindful of who's invited in. But they come in by invite, not by automatically, right? So be mindful in that process. So in creating boundaries, there is a premise of you need to be mindful that by opening up boundaries to other people, you're opening up, you are impacting those that are within your sphere of spiritual leadership. My wife, my kids, and myself as well, right? And so if I'm going to allow somebody to come through or cross a boundary, I need to be mindful it's not just going to inconvenience me or touch my heart. It's going to affect my kids. It's going to affect my wife. So I'd start there as it affects more. So we think of it like a team thing. If I've got a bad person on the team, right, but I don't take care of the bad person on the team, I'm impacting the rest of the team. So who's the bad person on the team? Me. I'm the weak link as the leader, if you would. So I want to make sure it's real clear. So if you're the one that are allowing relationships and impacting your boundaries that shouldn't be there, you're the problem, not the person that you shouldn't think shouldn't be there because you didn't create the boundary. You didn't create the safe space, if you would. So be mindful of that, starters. So as you're doing this, there is kind of a hierarchy of escalation. So it depends on, the infraction. So if someone's like, hey, they're communicating too much with the family, or maybe they're not respecting the bounds of communication. I don't believe that. I don't believe that as a man, I don't text a lot of females. Now I do for business practice in the world, but to be honest, I don't have personal conversations with females that are not my wife. And if I do, I just include my wife in the conversation. I think that's a healthy boundary. If I have a female that is imposing on that, even when I wasn't married to Monica, even when I was a single man for 6 months, I had to be very, very mindful of that communication. And even though I had the right and didn't necessarily need to include my wife because she passed away, right? I had to be very, very mindful of, hey, that communication does not impose on my personal boundaries. Then when Monica came in the picture, it created more of a boundary because I wanted to protect her heart, to know that, hey, this is our relationship. Those are not, right? So as you're doing that, there's a communication of, hey, this is the boundary. Hey, by the way, this is, it's a preference. The moment they violate that, I escalate it like, hey, by the way, now here's a new boundary. So every time somebody crosses over the boundary, I move the boundary wall further away. So if they can't respect the fact that, hey, if you want to text me and my wife, here's her number. I included her in the text chain. This is the new text chain, right? At that point, now I might even loop in their husband. We've had scenarios in our life where we've had some individuals who previously communicated with myself or Monica that we had to kind of push out and be like, hey, that's not this is a new relationship. Let us do it. So in that process, I will say this, it is uncomfortable. It's not, I've never had a situation where I've created boundaries where it was comfortable.
Yeah.
I've also rarely had a situation, and I can't even think of one, where when I created the boundary, I didn't feel good about the boundary, meaning that every time I put a boundary, I'm like, oh, I wish I'd done that sooner. That's always the conversation I have is, why didn't I do that sooner? Why didn't I send that text sooner? Why didn't I have that conversation? I will say that there are times that you need to be mindful of a text message is not as effective as a conversation, because sometimes my heart is real good. Like, I don't want to hurt somebody, but you know who I really don't want to hurt? My relationship with God, my relationship with my wife. So I would rather hurt the relationship that's like, hey, you're crossing the boundary. You're not being respectful. You're not even being discerning. You're not even being wise. I may not say that. I'm just saying, hey, this is my wisdom. This is my biblical perspective of this. But I will say this, it's always uncomfortable. So you're like, man, I want to do this in a way where it makes everybody feel good. Sorry, you're not an ice cream salesman, right?
Yeah.
So just be mindful of that. Like you can't please everybody. Don't try. Please Jesus, take care of your spouse. Please Jesus, take care of your spouse. Everybody else is on the outside. And if they don't understand that, then they certainly need to be further on the outside.
I think that's a great point of when you make the boundary, what you just said there, they need to be further on the outside. guys, when you or your wife have a boundary in place and a person doesn't respect that, then they don't deserve to be in your life because they don't respect you. I'm going to be very plain and clear with that. We've had situations where someone said to my wife, a man said to my wife, when it comes to Dustin, you get very defensive. And she said, yeah, he's my husband. What'd you expect?
Yeah.
And those types of conversations, like, first off, you should expect someone to be defensive of their husband. Second off, if you're a guy having that conversation, shut up. That's just inappropriate to even
it's
talk
not your
about.
place. You are out of line.
Not at all. Yeah. And guys, when those conversations come up with things, be sure to go directly to that person and say, hey, we're not going to talk like that anymore. And be kind, be loving. I know my emotion can get to me as I think of some personal things that have happened in my life in this area right now. And I can get kind of defensive and you can hear it in my passion and my voice, but be respectful, be kind. You lay a clear boundary. And, you don't have to, say like what Luke said. What'd you say, man? You said, you're unwise, you're this, you're ignorant, whatever it might be. You don't have to insult people. I mean, you can, but don't. But you can't say,
on how
hey,
bad the infraction was. So.
There you go. But you can just say, hey guys, this isn't how we operate. And if they don't respect that, that's fine. And now here, let's loop back to the family. If you have to set a boundary with family to say, hey, because I had someone who in my family would call, umpteen, and that's a real number, umpteen times a day if they were trying to get in touch with me, even at 2 and 3 in the morning sometimes. And I had to say, hey, no, you're not calling me like this. If you need something, text me and I'll get to you when I can. But this is not okay. And then it works out. Actually, I don't hear from them anymore, but that
it worked out.
It worked out, So all that, guys, there is a time to push away. And if you're like Luke and I don't know if I'd call myself a people pleaser, maybe. But I don't like to hurt people's feelings. I don't. Yeah,
I'm a recovering people pleaser, so minus the recovering.
Yeah. There you go. But when you have to go through these times, remember Galatians 6, where it talks about carrying each other's burdens. You have to be willing to let people carry your burdens. I'll be honest with you. I probably didn't accept that until maybe the last year or so. And Luke's been a great help in me doing that. I've got some other friends that I know, like I can talk to about those things, and they share with me their burdens. Because guys, I think we're afraid sometimes we're going to be, and this is, I don't know how to say this without sounding punny, but we're going to be a burden for sharing our burdens. You're not. If someone who loves you and cares for you, they want to share your burdens with you. They want to be there for you, and they want to help you. This is me. I'll tell you, like, I will carry your burden with you, and I want to help you, as not offload, but as you go through life with your burden, right? I want to be there for you. I tell people, that are facing depression and different things of that nature, I'll be with you in that. But my goal is not to just sit there while we both just drown in our sorrows. It is to seek the Lord and how do we move forward, with this experience and into the life God has for us. So, spiritual embrace is having people that can carry burdens with you, and even the burden of setting boundaries, even the burden of hurt relationships because of your spouse, or even with your spouse, as we talked about the divorcees in the previous conversation. But guys, these 2 seasons of embracing and withdrawing, they're not just overall seasons of your life. They are going to be relationship dependent, and you will have seasons with individuals where you're embracing them, and at the same time, you're withdrawing from others. And then it can flop and switch. And I know for me, and Luke, I think your life and maybe your view of things sometimes is more consistent across the board than maybe mine was, but I can be all over the place sometimes. And I can be very ADHD about it and all this stuff. And we often think that life should just be like this steady flow of a river, just going downstream, a beautiful scenery. But in reality, it's a nice stream that has some whitewater rapids integrated into it. And it's going to go crazy. And then it'll go back to a nice stream. And then it opens back up to the whitewater rapids. And that's just life, guys. That's part of it. We're promised trials and tribulations. And that's not just physical elements. That's not just financial problems. That's also relationships with people. Yeah. So there's a time to embrace people. There's a time to withdraw. There's wisdom in each of them. And there's ultimately should be a desire to please the Lord first. Yeah. And lead your family well. Yeah. Luke, what are some closing thoughts you got for our guys on this?
Yeah, I would say this, and I don't want to start another podcast session on this, but I do want to touch base on this. We talked about on our perspective of when we need to embrace and when we need to refrain from embracing. That's us and maybe the circle that we're leading. Sometimes you are on the outside of boundaries, meaning that many of us, and I'll speak for myself, there's been several times in my life, even in the last couple of years, where I have been the person that somebody has put the boundary for because, and it's not because I don't really know necessarily all the reasons, but because I'm not them, but there was a reason for their mental health, for their season that they were going through, where they needed to put me and what I was doing or going through on the outside. And they very clearly had to set boundaries. And by the way, I don't think it was easy for them. But I know I've been on the outside of the boundary, not because I'm a bad person or have bad intentions, but because of what they were going through. You don't get to be the judge of whether the boundary is correct or wrong. You get to set your own boundaries, and also you need to respect the boundaries of others. So if you're here and you've listened, you're like, well, they don't know the whole story. Hey, it doesn't matter. A boundary is there. When someone sets a boundary, you need to honor that to the nth degree. You need to take that and make sure that you do not cross that. You do not go close to that. You don't flirt with the line. That's not appropriate. So if someone's given you a boundary, abide by it. There's a time to refrain from embracing in this. And if you're like me, like, oh, I want to mediate all relationships, including my own. Hold on a second. Stop being God. Just take a step back and realize that, hey, this is a season where that relationship needs to be some distance or within the boundaries. Say, what does that look like? It's unique to each of us. I believe that all of us have some people in our life that have created boundaries for us not to cross as well. And we need to be mindful of the season that they're in and be understanding that we don't know what they're going through, what their experience, what their knowledge is, what they think happened. It's okay for them to be wrong and create a healthy boundary for themselves. You don't need to try to prove them that they're wrong. That's not the point of a boundary.
No, that is so good. Ecclesiastes 3:5, guys, reminds us that there is rhythms in our relationships and our soul care. Let's make sure we're embracing the Lord first, our spouse, leading our family well. And if we must refrain, be sure to refrain with wisdom, grace, and joy. And respect others who choose to refrain from you, because it's okay. Your identity is not in your relationship with them. It's in your relationship with Christ. Last week's episode and this one, this two-parter, has been a very heavy conversation. And for some of you, it may hit home. If you need someone to talk to, you can always reach out to us. Contact me directly, Dustin at menaftergod.net. If you need someone in your church family to talk to, don't hesitate to reach out. I know there's a pastor, ministry leader, a good man in your church that would love to have some open, honest, vulnerable conversations with you. And if you do have some boundaries you need to set, if you need to refrain, don't wait. Like Luke said earlier, go ahead and do it, because you'll be asking yourself, why didn't I do it sooner? So guys, as we're still in Men's Mental Health Month, we'll continue the conversation of seasons next week. I know Thomas Osterkamp's doing a phenomenal job on Mondays. Make sure you're listening to that. And don't forget, we'll put it in the show notes. We have a 30-day devotional for dads. That's just a 5-minute daily thing that will help you grow in your relationship with the Lord and as a father to your children. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Men After God podcast. We hope today's discussion has encouraged and equipped you on your journey. We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, comments, or would like to partner with us, please reach out at support@menaftergod.net. Stay connected with our community by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/menaftergodpodcast. For deeper engagement, join our group at facebook.com/groups/menaftergod and connect with other men pursuing God's heart. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback helps us reach more men striving to live faithfully. Until next time, stay strong in the faith and continue pursuing after God.